And taking a look at this right here, honestly, this could execute, and the only way this could like execute would be if we break down this current low right here, and if we just start slow grinding down from around here, that would actually be a very nice trigger for a rotation, for a move all the way down to this POC right here. And honestly, that could be a trade. That is a trade that I'd be looking for. The only time I would actually really get into a short still would be upon breakdown. This is something that I talked about, I think, last Monday as well. And the bias and the idea remains the same. That if I'm looking for shorts, I would be looking for any sort of shorts that are upon breakdown. And the stops would most likely be at the prior higher low. And sorry, lower high, and we're gonna punch our TPs all the way down to this POC or wherever the rotation stops. And honestly, there's a chart that I want to share with you guys. Let me just share that in the chat real quick. Let me just find it real quick, give me a second. If you guys have any questions at the moment, you can like type it in the chat. I'm just gonna go and find the chart that I'm looking for to like explain what sort of setup that we might could get. It's in the volume default section. Give me a second, guys. Good morning, Medic. How are you doing? Okay, I'm uploading a chart in the chat. If you guys take a look at this chart right here, and if you take a look at what's going on there, I'll explain this very briefly, very quick. Let me just like open this up, open media link. Yeah, if you can still hear me, I'm gonna explain this chart to you guys. If you open the chart and then if you take a look at the chart real quick, what's basically going right here is that usually this is a very repetitive pattern that prices usually range and then they form this sort of value, and when the value is formed, and whenever like the value is formed, what happens is that there's a lot of chop and there's a lot of value formation, and after that value formation there's usually a deviation to either side, and the deviation is usually an indicator for continuation in that specific trend. So the way this like executes is that usually it's like, let's just say there's a lot of chop that's went on, and that chop usually has like multiple sequential higher lows, and what that does is that builds a lot of liquidity. If you take a look at all of these higher lows, there's a lot of liquidity that is sitting right around these lows right here, right? That has not been taken. And like I said, like I think I mentioned it like 2 weeks ago, where I was talking about like if prices are to go all the way to like 90K or even 100K, it must sort of break higher than this. So it needs to stop slow grinding very slow. The more the slower it gets, the more liquidity it builds just below current market price. And since prices are around that liquidity build, what could happen is just a little and a minor shift could completely change the trend, and then that could actually nuke everybody that is in the market. So that's why we need, like, for especially for price, when we're talking about BTC, we need prices to be very fast. And when prices are very fast, they need to continue higher, they need to pump like crazy, and then they need to follow this specific pattern, especially with BTC and major pairs in crypto. They need to follow this specific pattern that they're fast with the continuation, with the slow grind, and then they lead to a massive pump after that. And any sort of PA that does not look like that and is very slow, and then sort of starts to like deviate at some point, and then like gets even slower, starts from this sort of range, especially knowing we're in a hard time frame downtrend, is pretty bad, because what that does is that leads that to the price being closer to all the liquidity that is like built around these lows. And what that does is any sort of change, any sort of aggressive selling could completely change the momentum, and then end up like taking out everybody that has been building up this entire trend. So that's something that is very concerning. This is something that I talked about like 3 weeks ago as well, that we need to see this sort of like flashy pump right away, and if we do not, it's gonna like start slowing down, which it did. And I think we were talking about a short somewhere here as well. It was maybe a Monday stream I did, or a Thursday stream. It's somewhere in the recordings that we talked about a short from this level, and it was just like till around here. I didn't really like have a lead up on that short all the way down till here, but the idea was the same, that we have started to stall a bit, and we do not want stalling at all in our trend. We want like further continuation, and we need it very stronger. And since we have failed to do so, we are pretty much at a risky place for just completely traversing the trend back to these lows. And the image that I was showing, if you would like take a look at the chat and take a look at the image, the footprint that I've shared, what it says is like a lot of the times what happens, like there's value formation, there's a lot of value that gets formed, and in that value there's usually the what the structure looks like. There's a lot of like sequential higher lows that get formed, and from there there's usually a deviation. And when like the deviation isn't really confirmed, the only time the deviation is actually confirmed when prices get back into the prior value. And whenever it gets back into the prior value, there's a lot of liquidity that is sitting around the lows. And what that does is that completely really just takes the wait, give me a second. Oh, I cannot do that. That really completely takes all of the lows and then eventually ends up going further lower. So that's the basic idea of usually an accumulation. Then there's sort of manipulation or deviation, as we say. And then after that, there's actual expansion. And so that is the idea of the higher time frame setup that we could have at the moment. We could like have build, and we could sort of form a trade around this right here. So that's something that I'm looking for. And something else, the other short that I would actually be interested into taking would be if we get back up around here. Honestly, this is a very nice PI. So if we could get back up, like the way we're sort of trending up, so we could get back up around here. And if you do get a rejection from here, that is sort of another trade for us. And that sort of just goes back to this extreme PI right here. And maybe it forms a low, maybe it doesn't, but that's gonna be our initial TP. So if we do get a rejection from here, and I'll explain you guys how to like look for those triggers in a minute. But if you do get sort of that rejection from around here, we are gonna get a pretty nice trade to the higher low right here. And once we do get the higher low, we could do either two things. We could either just rotate all the way back down if we break down again, and that it's in itself is another trade that you could take, another breakdown short. And this is the only two times you will actually want to focus on shorts. And if you are looking at the setup, if you're looking at the charts and you were just looking at shorts, you would most likely be wasting your time. So you don't want to be wasting your time or just getting into like positions that would probably just chop you out. So just wait for the POIs and wait for the triggers to hit, and when they do hit, you have a very nice setup that is brewing, especially for shorts. As for longs, we are currently still sort of trending higher. And if you take a look at the lower time frame real quick, I'm gonna like clean this chart right here. I think this is like one piece of chart open. Let me open some other chart. Fiber right here. No, BTC USDT. We're gonna look for BTC USDT. Yeah, let's go to the lower time frame. The lower time frame does not look bad at all. Let me take a look at the chat. Good morning, Biscuit. Oliver said all those SFPs we had in this tiny range. Let me see. In this tiny range, is that a sign of weakness or strength? Are you talking about like these ones? I don't think they're SFPs. They are just like highs and highs. If that's what you mean. But this is a sign of weakness because you don't want any sort of like stalling in your trend. That is something that's not really healthy for your trend. So what you're talking about is probably these highs. So it looks like a triple high structure right here. So that's a lot of delta that is stuck right there. And honestly, besides that, I don't think this looks like an SFE for me at the moment. I'm not sure which SFP you're referring to, but yeah, this is a sign of weakness. You don't want any sort of weakness in your trend, so that's very important. Good morning, GT. How are you doing? There's some more comments in the chat. Well, let me see. I think One Piece is long. It's a pretty nice long, and I'm seeing an uptrend. Let me take a look at the lower time frame. Honestly, the lower time frame itself does not look bad at all. Guys were like taking longs in the chat last night, and I was like, that's gonna be a decent trade. Just look for, just hope that it does not break down, and if it like gets a bearish break structure and holds high, maybe cut there. If you do not get a trigger like that, honestly, this is gonna be a very nice long that like pumps up from here. And so far so good. We are not really breaking down. We just like fill this gap up, and then we're like pumping higher. Even right now, this is a pretty nice grind. The only thing that's concerning here are these highs that are sitting right here. So what we really want is more continuation right around here. And if you do get that continuation, honestly, that could be a pretty nice long setup to, let's just say, all the first honestly, I would just first look for aiming around these highs, these liquidities that are building up right around here. This is where the FEG starts, and this is where the FEG honestly like dies out. And so that's basically where I would look for like my first TP to be. And yeah, so that's a sort of a long that I would actually go for. Raman asked, will there be a replay? Yes, there will be a recording. I will post it live on Twitter, because every session that I do on Monday especially is recorded, and I always post them on Twitter. I'm gonna make an archive, and I'm gonna upload every single session that I've done, and sort of upload them on the YouTube archive, so it will be accessible to pretty much everybody, and that would be helpful for everybody as well. Yep. ATTR asked, do you have a special tip or some to differentiate a real slow grind trending move with an unhealthy move to reverse soon? I mean, a real trending move versus a few higher low, higher high before a liquidity grab. Honestly, a real trending move, that could mean a lot of things, but if you do want to look for something that would last, especially in terms of a trend, you need to look for a few things. That is, you need to look for if that is in a bullish PI. If we're talking about bullish trends, let's just say it's in a bullish PI, and then it just tapped that bullish PI, and from that bullish PI, it sort of like is forming the sequential higher low and higher high structure, knowing that, let's just say there's a resistance or POC or some sort of resistance level that is just right around where the slow grind is happening. If we're able to sort of flip that, that is very helpful for you. But usually you want to enter wherever you see that there are signs of weakness, because what we're actually focusing on is not continuation itself. Continuation is something that happens afterwards. What we're focusing on most of the time is weakness. So let's just say this is a bearish trend. So for prices to like come down, right, it needs to form a bearish trend. So it's like forming a bearish trend. We don't need to look for like continuation, because continuation usually happens once the bottom is formed, and then the continuation happens, right? By that time, your entry is a little too late, so you don't want to look for continuation right away. First, you want to look for weakness, and the way you look for weakness is basically, is the trend really progressing further? If it's not progressing further, and if it's stalling, basically what went on around here. So we had a very bullish trend that was going high, and once we like stopped it, we started to like form these highs that showed a lot of weakness, that the bidders are not able to push the price further higher than this level around here, and it's forming this bearish structure that is very visible. So you want to look for weakness, especially let's just say if the downtrend is going down. If you want to look for longs, you want to look for weakness in that downtrend. And now that it's like it stops breaking down, it starts stalling, that is actually what you want to look for, and that's something that you would get your first entry trigger at. And then from there, once the bottom is formed, then after that there is like continuation, and that's where you want to look for like continuation setups most of the time. That's basically what you want to look for, instead of looking for a real trend or what's a fake trend. You want to just look for weakness in the trend that is already working, already going on. And if you don't see any sort of weakness, just actually trade the trend. You don't need to make it very complex, or you don't need to overthinking and think about it too much. It's just the same patterns. It's always the same thing. It's a lot of fractals. Just take it with a little bit of context. If there's let's just say news POI, or is there anything happening, and if there's nothing happening, then that's gonna work out for you pretty well. Yeah, do you guys have any questions at the moment? You can type it in the chat. Let me take a look at what sort of positions everybody voted in the poll. So far, everybody is basically just short. There is only one person that is long, besides that sideline. So 70% of the people right here are short at the moment. Honestly, I want to know where your guys' short entry is. If it's like down here, if it's here, you can like type it in the chat what your entry number is for the short, and I can honestly advise something about it. Would appreciate if everybody like types in where their entry is, so like that could like help me understand what sort of like positions everybody's in at the moment. Ramen just showed me looking at this at the moment. Okay, let's look at the time frame, lower time frame PA as well, and sort of look for in case we get a trade. In the meantime, if you guys can like tell me what sort of entries that you have and what number that is, that could like help me a lot. Taking a look at this, honestly, if you're waiting for this POI to hit, we would need like breakdown right here, and then it could come sorry, it could come like around here, and then from here it could like continue higher. That is something that I don't really mind. The only thing I do mind is I don't want it to end up as a high. So you have to know that this high right here, it looks like this structure right now. So so it's like sort of a this is sort of a lower high, and if we do end up rejecting right around here, and we do end up rejecting pretty strong, that could end up as something that's not really bullish looking. So that's something that we don't really want. Honestly, the best idea, the best trade would be that we just continue. We just form this continuation. But also knowing that this is the London session right now, it's not even like New York session at the moment. New York do we have any sort of news today? Can anybody check like Forex Factory? Let me take a look at Forex Factory real quick. There might be some sort of news. Market is close. Okay, Memorial Day. Okay. No news today, so our news is gonna be just New York session at the moment. So what's most likely to happen, honestly, best case, we continue this grind till we are up into further like New York session, and then we could spike into New York session, and if you get a pretty decent spike that flushes the some of the longs, and then from there we could get a retracement, that would be honestly my trade. I would literally just ape on that trade, and I would just continue that trade to probably an 80 or a little further higher. That would be a very nice trade, or trading the continuation right here would be a nice trade. Besides that, if I see any sort of lag in momentum, or if I see any sort of rejections right around here, let's just say what I want to see is, let's just say if it rejects right here, I'm actually gonna look for shorts. I'm gonna start looking for shorts. I'm gonna put my stops somewhere around this high, because that's where the prior lower high is, and then I'm gonna sort of TP. First TP is gonna be like this, fill up this FEG, and then we could spike here, and then we could form a low. So that's the idea that I have at the moment. And honestly, this short, it does not look that bad, knowing that we are heading into New York session, and then we are stalling a bit. The only thing that I would really need right now is a little more development into PA right here, for this short especially. So that's what I'm waiting for. Maybe like a 30 minutes or 40 minutes, we would be able to like get a pretty nice and clear view of how we're gonna execute this. Kahos said his entry is 77k, stop loss 78k. That is a very big trade. So your trade is sort of 77k, and your stop loss is like 78k, 78k. So something like this. But prices are pretty much like a little higher than your entry. So if your TP is like around here or even here, that's like a 3-hour trade. Honestly, I would recommend that you wait for this sort of rejection to happen. I would recommend that you wait until this sort of rejection happens, and then we do actually get a short trigger, and then it starts to develop something like this. And when it starts to do that, honestly, shorts then are pretty valid. The first thing it's gonna target is this like FEG, and the second thing it's gonna target is gonna be like the extreme of this entire move. So just let that PA develop a bit, and then you can like risk onto that trade. For now, it's grinding up at the moment, so don't really recommend that. ATDR said sometimes just lagging between sessions or between momentum, and we can see fake weakness in the trend. A first rejection is sometimes a future acceptance. That's where it's confusing. You have to sort of let it develop a lot of the times. I feel like you're not letting the price itself develop. You're entering a little too soon. That's when you start to like get confused about if it's a trend that it's like working or if it's a trend that is like going or not. So you need to like sort of let it develop, and you need to watch out for pivotal times in the day, probably around New York session open, probably around London open, probably when there's gonna be a news that hits the market. Besides that, fake momentum is usually not seen. So yeah. Banana said, Shini, what are your best tips for managing trades? Honestly, for managing trades, let's talk about a trade that I recently took. Definitely not this one. Let me go to the Shinibot section and take a look at what's my last trade that I shared with everybody here. It was a pretty nice long. Let me go and take a look at it. Yeah, it was like around 76 somewhere here. Let me like delete the fuck shit that I have on my chart right now. Wait. And let me go to the lower time frame. I'm gonna share how I like manage this trade real quick, and how it ended up pretty nice. I think it was around like 18th, somewhere around here. 76 100, and from there, yeah, it was somewhere around here. Let me show you real quick. This is the last trade that I shared with like everybody, and I think my stops are um right around here, and my TPs were like right around here. So that was like actually it was a 3-hour trade. So I think yeah, this was the sort of trade that I shared last. And honestly, the way you manage it is, first of all, you need to get your bias right. You need to get your understanding of what you're actually looking for in the market. And once you have that, like let's just say you are looking for like an uptrend, if you're looking for longs, and once you have your mind fixated on that, knowing that you don't want to stick to one bias as well. Once you have your mind fixated, okay, I want to look for longs because the market looks like it's likely to trend higher. What you gotta do is you gotta start looking for longs, you gotta start looking for POIs, and then once you have your entry, you have your invalidation, right? You always gotta have like a fixed invalidation before you take your entry. And honestly, whenever I'm actually executing my orders on the exchange on the prop, what I do is like I type in the entry, and then I type in the stop loss. I don't even type in the TP at all. I type in the TP once I've entered the trade. So usually a lot of the times, when you are missing the trade, you don't need to like set a TP first. You just like enter the trade with the stop loss set in mind. And a lot of the times, people mess up with the stop loss, but the only stop loss rule that I have is I want to put it at a significant high or a low. So if the high or a low gets broken, it's usually an SFP trade that I can just revenge trade and then sort of make my money back, or I will know that if my stop loss is taken, there's a break in the structure, and once there's a break in the structure, I can just flip my bias and look for shorts. So that's something you gotta look for. You gotta have a set TP, a set entry and a set stop loss. And after that, you can like set your TP easily and relaxed, right? Once you have that in mind, you wanna look for any sort of weakness around the entry itself is not bad. If it's continuing, let's just say I have a trade and my entry is like around here, right? And what's happening right now is like, let's just say price is going a little higher, it's going in my favor. What's happening is starting to stall, right? My POI, my first rejection POI was like right above here, but the prices are starting to stall right around my entry, which was not supposed to happen, right? But I'm gonna let it observe. I'm gonna watch it happen because I know like, okay, my trade itself is in a pretty nice POI, and what's gonna happen is likely it's gonna distribute a little, but it's gonna hold where my stop loss is. Let's just say my stop loss is around this low. It's gonna hold the stop loss level, and it's gonna go further higher. Now this is according to some discretion, and according to what the bias is with the fractal. So you need to get that right first, and once you have that right, you will have some sort of confidence in your trade. A lot of the times people don't have confidence in their trades, and they just like keep exiting their trades, and what that does is that leads to like a lot of problems, right? And from there you want to look for further continuation on that trade, and you want to sort of look for just any sort of structure that is developing in your favor. So that's something you want to look for, and once that is developing in your favor, you just gotta actually wait it out. You just gotta let it develop, and once that is developing and it's at around your POI, now your TP could be, usually what you gotta do, what I personally do, is I go for a minimum 2R or a minimum 3R. I usually actually go for just a minimum 2R, right? 2R is the setup that I go for all the time. And let's just say if a price rejects from a 2R and it like my TP is taken, what I'm gonna do is I'm probably gonna close the trade for 2R. That is my fixed TP system. But what happens is, let's just say price comes around the 2R setup and then it starts to like slow grind. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna drag my TP and I'm gonna extend it higher. Now that my TP is higher, because it's likely that it continues that trend, there's a lot of strength in that trade, I'm gonna let it develop to the next TP. And if that TP itself, if that resistance itself is also stalling and then prices are looking like it's gonna continue further higher, I'm gonna drag my TP even further higher to the next POI. And I'm just gonna keep letting that trade develop and develop, and until to a point where it gets like, it actually starts like distributing, it actually starts rejecting. And that's where like on the rejection, I'm gonna completely close my trade. So instead of like a 2R trade, now I'm ending up with a 5R trade. So that's this sort of management that you have to do actively with your trade, since you're scalping. And even if you're swinging, you gotta always like be actively managing your trade, because that's your money on the line. So the only body that cares about your money is gonna be you. So you gotta be like actively managing the trade itself. And about like exiting the trade, a lot of the times, as you guys have seen me, like what happens is when I'm like actually trading, I don't really let the trade go to my full stops. I usually just look for unless and until it's like it's a structure that I know it's gonna hold. Even if it comes very close to my stop loss, it's gonna hold, and then it's gonna continue higher from there. What I usually do, let's say this is a trade and this is my stop loss right here, and my TP is somewhere around here, like a 2R trade, and right around here, so like a 2R trade. And if I know that the structure is gonna hold and the prices are gonna go continue higher from there, I'm gonna let it develop. I'm not gonna like pussy out of the trade or completely close the trade. But if it's a structure, if a lot of the times what happens is if it's a structure where it looks like, let's say I'm not really confident on that structure, or I'm fading the trend itself, I'm fading the entire market, what's gonna happen is I'm probably gonna, if it's like breaking down, I'm probably gonna exit right around the break even, and including the fees as well. Usually you end up with like a minus 0.1R or like a minus 0.2R based off of your risk. So that's what usually goes on. And I'm actually gonna just like risk out, because that was essentially not a trade that I was taking with the trend itself. So that's how a lot of the times I manage my trades. And let's just say if I continue to hold on to that trade, because I knew the trade was gonna work out and we were in a pretty decent hard time frame POI, what's gonna happen, let's just say it gets a little higher, and just before my TP, if it starts to do a reversal on me, a breakdown, if it actually starts to reverse on me, I'm actually gonna just like close my trade right around there, even if it's for a 1 hour. Minimum, I usually go for like a 1 hour. If it's even below a 1 hour, let's just say if it's like a 0.5 hour, then honestly I just let it like close around the break even. So that's some management tips that I use, and that's some ways I like manage my trade. There's a lot more in depth to it, which I'll explain like some further on in some other session. Oliver was referring to the SFPs of the current range. Take a look at the 1 minute. Looking at the 1 minute. Are you talking about this 1 minute right here? Honestly, this, I wouldn't say it's like a lot of weakness, but it is like, I'm probably referring to these SFPs. Like it's sort of just baiting at the moment, so that is actually some sign of weakness. But at the same time, it's actually still developing at the moment, so you gotta give it some sort of time. And the way the weakness is like sort of confirmed is when there is sort of breakdown right around this level, and when there's like actual breakdown around this level, it's gonna like go further down. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions at the moment? Hype. Somebody said hype. What is hype looking like? Let me go to the 4 hour time frame. Is pretty good. Hype itself is continuing. It's probably gonna go to like 70s, which is something that I think I talked about in the last session as well. There's some questions in the chat. I don't have a question. Thank you guys for joining us for Zonzi asked, on prop do you usually enter with one order or so no partials? I enter with like one honestly on props usually a lot of the times the risk is just like 0.5, so just like one order works. ATTR said, you were speaking about hype being a first mover like 4 weeks ago. Yeah, but that was something like for a month ago or like 4 weeks ago. I was talking like hype and XPO. Either of these are gonna be like the first mover coin. So the way the first mover actually works, they're sort of gonna lead. They're gonna lead like pretty crazy, and the rest of the coins like ETH, Link, Sui, they're gonna sort of follow. They're gonna be a little slow, but that's what they're gonna do. I think there's a chart that I shared like a month ago. I explained it pretty much detail, and so far so good. It's working pretty fine, pretty well. And the last update that we had on hype was like that we were looking for hype longs like right around here, if you can see the drawings that I had, and even around here 39 to like 41. Now it's like around 63, so that's pretty good. That's working pretty well. Indie Junk and a few more traders in the chat took a very nice long on hype, so that's very good to know. Feels pretty good. So we said, hello Shini, you have the hype chart open. What's your plan on the retest and reclaim? I might look into trade. I actually took a scalp on this, like right around here where Indie Junk was long as well. And right now, what I talked about in last call was that if it actually does SFP this real quick, we're gonna just rotate all the way back to like 70 pretty easy. So that's what we're doing at the moment. So we're just gonna like sort of develop a bit maybe and then pump around 70s. And then from there, I actually don't know. I'll have to observe. That's how we are gonna develop, guys. Yeah. Any questions at the moment, guys? If you don't, that's good as well. Taking a look at the chart, I was hoping that we could get a trade, but if you do get a break structure, I would actually be interested in a short. Besides that, any breakout from this high is gonna be a long. That's something that I'll explain. And for the recording, this session is recorded. I'm gonna upload it on my Twitter, and I really